Trust is the foundation of progress. Yet in a world of rapid technological change and growing complexity, it often feels like the missing piece. I'm Matt Yarger, and I've spent years working at the intersection of sustainability, technology, and innovation. Through this podcast, I sit down with leaders, visionaries, and changemakers to explore one key question: what builds trust? From global systems to personal decisions, we'll dive into how trust, or the lack of it, shapes our world. Join me as we uncover insights, challenge assumptions, and explore how we can create a future built on trust. Let's get started. Welcome to the Future of Trust, where we explore how trust is built, broken, and rebuilt in the systems shaping our world. I'm your host, Matt Yarger. Today I'm joined by Deanna Reitman, a mother, a lawyer, and what I would call a friend who operates at the intersection of energy, law, and markets, where trust either holds up under pressure or collapses entirely. Most systems do not fail because people set out to cheat. They fail because everyone agrees to move forward before asking the uncomfortable questions. Deanna has spent her career asking those questions. She grew up with a strong sense that rules exist for a reason and that ignoring them rarely ends well. That early grounding shows up clearly in how she works today. Deanna does not approach trust as a feeling or a brand promise. She treats it as something that has to survive scrutiny, stress, and consequence. Over decades inside energy trading, compliance, and regulatory work, she has seen what happens when systems look solid on paper, but fall apart when money, liability, or enforcement enters the picture. She has been in the rooms where deals unwind because ownership was assumed instead of proven, where data looked convincing but could not establish control, and where standards sounded right but did not reflect the law that actually applies. That perspective matters right now. We are building more digital markets, more climate assets, and more data-driven platforms than ever before. Many of them move fast, many of them ask for trust early, few of them slow down long enough to actually earn it. Deanna operates as a counterweight to that momentum. She represents the buyer who has to say no, the regulator who will eventually ask questions, the system that has to hold up when enthusiasm fades. In this conversation, we do not talk about trust as an abstract value. We talk about where it breaks, where it survives, and what has to be true before it deserves to exist at scale. So let's dig in. Deanna, we've talked, probably a dozen times so far about everything from like business to personal to lacrosse and soccer and baseball and all kinds of stuff. So I'm really happy to have the opportunity to have you on my podcast. It was great doing an episode on yours as well, but let's get the audience to just understand you and where you grew up. How'd you get into your position? What did Deanna think she was going to do when she was 10? And how did you end up where you are now?
Thank you so much, Matt. So this is going to be a topic of discussion for everyone, but my name is pronounced Dina. I know. It's spelled like Deanna. It is so not your fault. It is my father's fault. So talking about where I grew up, I grew up in a really tiny small town in upstate New York. Very, very poor. My parents started dating when they were 14. I'm the oldest of three girls. They had me when my mom, I think was, I don't know, she got married in 19, maybe 21 or something. And back then, when you had a baby, when the woman was passed out, the dads would fill out the birth certificate. And so my name was supposed to be Gabriella. No, wait. My name was supposed to be Gabriella. Isn't that horrible? Gabriella. I know. And so my dad, I think, went along with that, and he took the chance when he can get it. When my mom was passed out, he filled out the birth certificate with Dina, but my uncle's name is Dean, so it's D-E-N, and then he just added Dina. And so there you have it, and no one says it right. And when I was in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher, I remember her to this day, Mrs. Khan, made me put a accent or a syllable break line in my name. And so sometimes when I'm writing really fast, I'll write, D-E-A-N-N-A, and I'll go back over and put that little dash because it was ingrained in my head from 5 years old. But yes, it is Dina. And so not your fault. We will just blame my dad. So, if he's listening, hello, Dad.
Was he a Dean Martin fan too?
Probably. I mean, again, I grew up in a really small town in New York. Mostly everyone was Italian. including me and my family. So probably so. I'd say, yeah, that's a good guess. But you asked me a question not only about my background in general, but you asked me a question about my background in this area. So I am one of the first in the family to go to college. And so um, we couldn't afford it. Like we just couldn't afford it. But it's like one of those weird things where like you're like right on the cusp, you don't really get like that scholarship. I mean, I got some scholarships, but you don't get like that financial aid type, help, but like they still couldn't afford it. And so I went to NYU undergrad and my parents, so I took out loans to do it and my parents couldn't afford the meal plan. So I was at NYU without a meal plan. I literally was starving to death and my mother was sending me granola bars and I was like down to 97 pounds and just
Oh my
dying.
goodness.
Right, yeah. And like literally. And so I started to knock on doors like in the World Financial Center or the World Trade Center, even I think back then. And I got a job as an office manager for a commodities trading desk. So at 18 years old, I started to be an office manager of a commodities trading desk. And it's one of the biggest blessings that have ever happened. From a really horrible situation to today, I've been able to draw on that experience from, just being started, like 18 years old, having to
Hmm.
sit at a trading desk, trying to understand what derivatives were, what settlement was. I was super young. I was 18 and, it was a trading desk and things were flying past my head and, having to work in that, stressful situation during the day because I then had to go to school at night. So I worked full time because the commodity trading desk was perfect. It was open from 7 to 4 Eastern. And then I started class at 4:20 and I went to class from 4:20 to like 11 and then just rinsed and repeated. And that's how I started in commodities and energy actually.
That's awesome. So where did you grow up in New York?
So it's a tiny place. It's called Marlboro, New York.
Okay.
So it's about 2 hours north of Manhattan, across the river from Poughkeepsie. So small, small place, mostly apple farmers. I do still think the apple farmers are there. There's some wine that's I think being grown there now. I haven't been back there in a very long time. You know who lives there? The only person who lives there is my Uncle Dean anymore. Yeah.
Okay. And so you were there from like birth to 18. Did your parents ever move around at all or?
They did not move. I was there from birth to 18. Um, I started to go to community school when I was 14
Okay.
because, um, I just
Trying to get early credits.
tried, yeah, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford it. So I started to take like the Spanish classes and things when I was 14 years old at a community college. So I actually went to community college before I went to NYU to get the credits and transferred them to NYU. So they've never been anywhere except for there. I mean, now nobody's there because I ended up in Texas and I have another sister in Texas and another one in Arizona, but not when we were younger. When we were younger, huge Italian family. My grandma was one of 11 and they all took pieces of land around where my great grandparents lived. And so it literally was all family and nobody went
Okay.
anywhere.
How long had they been there for? Like the family as a whole?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm imagining somewhere right around or before World War II. Because there's like
Okay.
stories about, I guess, the Italian prisoners of war were
Mm,
released to their families. And so, like, my uncle Dom, who married my Auntie Julia, he was an Italian prisoner of war that my family took in during World War II. It had to be
oh, yeah.
before then.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was like an immigration story where like, one of the predecessors moved in, bought some land, and then everyone since then has just like decided to move right around that individual.
I do think that that's what it was, but nobody's there except for my Uncle Dean.
Yeah.
I just, my grandmother's brothers and sisters, they're all gone,
Mhm.
right? And then it was like my father's generation. and my Uncle Dean stayed. I mean, there's a lot of people there that we know, but not family really anymore because everyone sort of moved out.
Yeah. Who was the first to move out of New York and down to Texas?
I was. So I
And
was,
everyone followed you?
um, I don't know if they followed me, more like they followed my kids. I don't know if
Yeah.
I rank that much, but, um, so my husband, Glenn, who you've met,
Mhm.
he went to the University of Houston undergrad because his parents moved from New York to Houston when he was in high school, and so he stayed here for college. And so when we met in law school in New York, he was always trying to get back to Houston, right? And I just so happened to take a job in the legal department of Citigroup in New York, and I was the youngest lawyer on the team. I was in their commodities, futures, options legal team or whatever. And at that time, it was like 2003, maybe 2003, 2004. Citigroup decided that they were going to open an energy trading desk in Houston. And
Oh, no.
yeah, and no other lawyer wanted to be on the working team. And because I was the youngest and the lowest on the totem pole, I had to join that working team. And again, it's kind of one of these stories where it's like blessings from like really like weird situations that you would think would be terrible. So to
Yeah.
join all these meetings about, what you need from a legal perspective, what you need from a regulatory perspective to set up an energy trading desk. First of all, I learned a ton. But second of all, in the end, when it was done and they like, we're going to open it up, which City Group is still here doing commodities and energy. I'm in Houston, by the way. Um, they asked me if I wanted to move. And I went home and I said to Glenn, oh, they just asked me if I wanted to move to Houston. Isn't that crazy? Like typical New Yorker, right? There's no other place on the earth.
You're
And he
like,
was like,
"No."
what now? And then within like the next day, he had a job interview at a law firm based in Houston, Texas. He was
That's
ready to
awesome.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when
It's
we
like as
took,
soon as that opportunity presented itself, he's like, "Let's go. I'm in it."
yeah, he's like, I'm in, I want to go back. And when we took this is what I mean. So when we took our oldest son, which was the only grandson at the time, from New York to Houston, then everybody was like,
Mhm.
I think I'm moving to Texas. My parents, my sisters.
Was it one of those, like, you move down, you're like, "Holy crap, I can do so much more with my money here," and then everyone else was like, "Crap, why do we live in New York still if we could have that?"
Yeah, it took me a while. It took a year or so. But yeah, I mean, you have a bit of a culture shock
Mhm.
um, as a New Yorker for sure. Um, but once you get over the culture shock, you do feel that. Like you feel like, wow, your money just goes a lot further. You can almost feel like you can shut off a little bit more. Not like you're shutting off, but you don't. I don't know why. I just didn't feel as guilty. Like you were
There's not as
talking about.
much noise too, I'm sure. Like, New York is just like there's so much going on all the time, whereas, like,
Yeah,
Houston, you can kinda step out a little bit and just be
you
out.
can. You can. And, people were willing to say out loud more in Houston than they were in New York. Like, I'm leaving right
Mhm.
now because I'm going to practice with my kid. I'm not saying I wouldn't get back on the computer or do whatever it is that needed to be done, but it just was an easier thing to do. Um, and so, yeah, my family just followed. And as a matter of fact, um, my youngest sister did all of her college here, undergrad and everything.
That's awesome. I
Yeah,
wish
she
that would've
married a
happened to
Texan.
us.
What?
I wish that would've happened to us because we moved from Baltimore. I didn't grow up in Baltimore. I grew up, in Memphis, but I met my wife and we got married and grew up, or started raising our family in Baltimore. And then I got to stop working for the government and I was like, screw this. I don't want to stay in Baltimore. And we moved to Austin, just like complete impulse. We went down there for our birthdays one year for a week. And by the end of the week, I had like 3 job offers. A bunch of people wanted to partner with me and have me as an advisor. I was like, why do I live in Baltimore? Like, get me out of here. So we signed a lease that week. We had only been there for like 3 days. I was like, we're moving here immediately. Went
Very
back.
Texan.
Yeah,
Very Texan.
cut our lease in Baltimore, packed everything up, and 2 weeks later, we lived in Austin.
Yeah, it's very Texan. The
Yeah.
like, I know that, people don't like that show Landman. I like the show Landman.
I love the show
Because
Landman.
I do too.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it shows Texas culture. I mean, it's maybe a little over the top, but really not really. You know how like they're
Yeah.
always eating together or like the grandmother is right next door. And my
Mhm.
favorite character of all time, obviously, is Angela. She's like my favorite character. And she is
Some
like,
similarities there, I can see it.
right. But she's like the Texas woman, right?
Yeah.
Like looking beautiful, smelling beautiful, nice as pie, right? Just very, confident, very Texan, very, very, very,
Mhm.
very Texan. And I love it. I love Houston. I've never lived in Austin, so I don't know how to compare it, but like you can eat well here. I mean, we eat so well.
Oh, yeah.
You must eat well.
We cook well. Everything here in Delaware is chain restaurants. So, like, one of the things we're probably gonna go back down to Austin just for a trip in May,
Oh, you're in
just 'cause
Delaware now. Oh,
yeah,
you
yeah,
back. Okay, all right, never mind.
yeah, but we moved back because of family. So, like, I was saying, "Man, I wish that would've happened to us." We lived in Austin for 6 years, and family came to visit us, like, 2 or 3 times. And so when we were gonna have our 2nd son, we were like, "Man, it was tough raising our 1st son on our own like that because he was only 5, 6 months old when we left. So we moved back just to be around family and, like, to have the support system because I was starting my company and everything. So, I mean, if grandma would have moved down to us, we would have never left. We would still be in Texas.
Yeah, well, I actually, again, making fun of my dad a little bit, but well, I was, but like that
Mhm.
was him. Like he
Yeah.
was like, "We're leaving," and you're talking about a man who grew up on land
Mhm.
that his mother got from her family, like those 11
Yeah.
kids who came from Italy, they each got a piece of land. And you're talking about he was like, if my grandson is in Texas, we are moving to Texas. And he left a house and all of his friends and a location that he's been in his whole life. So it really was him. And
Yeah, it's
I'm
it's
really
really,
lucky.
like, Italian family values too. Like, it's really thick.
Yeah, I'm really, really, really lucky. And now, um, my youngest sister is in Dallas and my middle sister is in Arizona, and they're in Dallas or Arizona because
Hmm.
my kids are older and my sisters have younger kids now, and they're there. I mean, they're
Yeah.
just there, and that's really him. So, I mean, my
He's
mom
like,
does
"I'm gonna
most of
be
the
there."
work. Yeah, my mom does most of the work, but he is the one who's like, "We're gonna be right there," and then he's the one who's like, "Wait, they're up. It's midnight. I'm gonna go to bed. Grandma will feed you." You know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh. What did your parents do?
Um, my father worked for IBM.
Okay.
I don't know what he did actually. Um, I can't even begin to guess. And my mother worked as a data entry processor for the state of New York.
Oh, wow, okay. So
So
both
she would
pretty
be
technical
clicking,
jobs.
click, click, click. What, say it again?
So both pretty technical jobs.
Yeah, they both had pretty technical jobs. My dad definitely had a technical job, and that's probably why I didn't understand it. Um, but my mom mostly was data entry. But yeah, pretty technical data. It's
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I never thought of that before. I mean, maybe that's why I do it. I never thought of that before.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that people love about this podcast is, like, we don't really focus on your work for the first 20 minutes. It's what are your foundations and trust? Like, what did you learn from your parents and your family and your culture? So that we can understand, once we get a little bit further, like, how it applies to how you make decisions. And we get that a lot where people are like, "Holy crap, I've never actually taken the time to think through this to that degree and understand these connections."
Yeah, I'd never thought about that before. I mean, I always like every time someone's like, "Well, why do you do this and why do you do that?" It always comes down to, "Well, we didn't have much, so I had to."
Mhm.
But I never actually thought of I may be really like driven towards like technological things and database things and digitizing things because of my parents. I
Yeah.
always focused on the fact that I had gotten this job in commodities and energy. That's
Mhm.
so interesting. I'll have to
Yeah.
say that to my
And, like, what
parents.
kinda pointed you towards it is the kind of work that your parents did and probably how they talked to you about the things that they did. Like, I noticed with my son or our sons, like, we take a lot of time to communicate with them, and we'll go in depth with them, and there's a very clear difference between, like, our kids and a lot of our friends' kids. Like, the friends that don't take that time, you can see a stark difference in, like, how Tristan and Rowan approach problems or how they deal with, like, empathy situations or bullies or those kind of things versus other kids.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I mean, that's definitely true
Yeah.
because, well, first of all, not every kid's the same. So even if you're acting the same with each kid, they may not respond the same.
Oh yeah. That's
But yeah, I mean, but that's definitely true. We are lawyers, both of us.
hmm
And so you can tell sometimes, like, so, when our kids want something, like they have like this, like, argument prepared where, this is what I want. This is why I want it.
hmm
Here's how it will be beneficial and add value. And here's why the price is good, right? Like, not like we ever
That's
say
awesome.
no, okay? Because we're
Yeah.
terrible like that. But
But
it's
they
like,
watch you. They watch
but they
y'all
watch,
discuss
yeah.
things. And that's probably how y'all like convince each other to do things sometimes.
We must talk about it, right? Like, okay, well, we'd like to go on vacation, but can we go? What's going on with school? What do we have
hmm
to, do you have to turn something in, or will you be able to relax? We must do it, like you were saying.
Yeah, there's all
We're
kinds of
both
just like
like
little
that.
mannerisms. But I kind of combat myself too on like the nature versus nurture because I think a lot of that gets nurtured into them. But like you mentioned Landman earlier, one of the reasons I really like it is the main character, Billy Bob Thornton, exactly like my dad. But I didn't know my dad until I was 23. And so like after I met him, I was like, oh, he's very like blunt. This is how it is. This is why we do things. Pretty highly opinionated. It takes some work to like get him to change his mind, but once he does, he sticks with it. But like my mom and my stepdads, multiple, were not like that at all. My dad and my brother on my dad's side are both mechanics, diesel mechanics for UPS, and like my brother has his own shop in Indiana doing great work too, and he's like really built that up into a successful business. But like at 14, I was changing engines and cars in the backyard, and no one in my family knew anything about cars. We didn't watch racing or go to anything like that. So there's this like nature part that I obviously got from my dad's side. And then I'm still seeing like all the nurture part of like I'm ingraining in my kids and like how they respond to things versus other kids.
Yeah. Well, that's got to be true because you're talking to a woman who's married to a lawyer, and one kid is a painter, and the other kid makes EDM, or she'll murder me. It's not EDM, but to me, it sounds like EDM
hmm
music on
Like
the
electronic
computer.
music. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like noise, but supposedly, like, people really like it. Like, he posted something while we were on spring break, and like within like an hour, he had 1,000 people listening to it.
Wow.
I wish I knew what it was called. I'm like a terrible mother, but yes, nature versus nurture, because, um, you know, we are obviously lawyers. So like you know, whatever our nurture is more like what I'm telling you. Like they're always like trying to argue for whatever the hell they need.
Mhm.
But nature, like I loved to sing when I was little. Loved it. Glenn loved to sing. Constantly singing around the house. Like constantly. Every time we buy a new house or get to an apartment, we're putting those little speakers everywhere
Yep.
now. Constantly. Um, and my mother-in-law is a painter. My mother liked to do like arts and crafts and sell them and stuff. So like nurture that like art stuff is in them. We definitely
Mhm.
didn't push it, but somehow it came out.
Yeah, it's just naturally, like, in their genetics. The things that kinda get embedded in our DNA can be so specific sometimes, it's scary. Um, but let's kinda bring it back, into these foundations of trust. So this is a common question I ask on every podcast. Can you share a moment when your trust was either built or broken and how that has shaped how you make decisions today?
Yeah, so I had the pleasure, I will say it that way, to build, create, and run two nonprofits
Wow.
in Houston, Texas. Yeah. So I'm a New Yorker. We said that. Married to New Yorker. I don't know if I said that. Who played lacrosse his like entire life and went away to college to play lacrosse, and um, really kind of loved the game. And when our oldest was in the second grade, Glenn turned to me and he said, I think we need to start a lacrosse program. And I was like, okay. But anybody who knows me say, okay, you know that this thing would run like a well-oiled machine, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you know, fundraising and, you know, getting the fields and making sure they had lights and making sure that the practice plans were appropriate and making sure that the parents were volunteering and all this stuff, right? So
Every T crossed, every I
every
dotted,
T crossed, every
backup
I dotted, the
plans.
whole shebang. So one of the things about lacrosse in Texas is a lot of times if your goal, if you're really good at it, is to get recruited for college, right? Like it's a tool to get you into college. And so to get into college from Texas is very different. You don't have like a lacrosse team in your school. So you have to play select lacrosse. Like you have to in
Mm,
Texas to be recruited. I'm sure maybe, my kids are already in school, so maybe this has changed, but I don't think so. It's really hard to get to a good college, to get people to look at you without playing select lacrosse. So that's the second nonprofit. So we set up a second nonprofit. It was all nonprofit, which Select Lacrosse is a gold mine. But we didn't need money. We're professionals, we're lawyers. And so for us, we wanted to do it in our community. And so we ran the whole thing as a nonprofit, right? And when we would sign up for tournaments, for example, they could be $3,000 a team. But I
mm,
would call and I would say, we're a nonprofit, and I'd try to get that price down, right? You know what I'm saying? So, I just trusted, right, that the community understood that I was doing it in the backyard,
yeah.
that I wanted there to be more opportunity for the kids in our community. I just I don't know what I maybe thought that they were in my head, maybe it's my fault or whatever, but I was burned pretty badly when the community sort of wanted like, assumed that we were doing, like, this select lacrosse thing to exclude kids that couldn't play select lacrosse.
Hmm.
Yes, I understand it's very hard because I have a kid that's great in sports and I have another kid that's great in some sports and not others. So I get it when your kid doesn't actually play. As a parent, it hurts. And not everybody can play select. So I just sort of like thought that they understood that I was doing it in the community's backyard because it meant that the community kids had more
Yeah.
opportunity to go to school. I mean, shoot, I even started a girls program. I didn't even play. And I had all the other moms of the boys coaching the girls and flying people in from New York. So we had a bunch of friends to get a girls program going. We had gotten girls into college. Me, I mean, I'm not athletic at all,
Yeah.
but the trust was kind of broken when they like called me in front of like the community, like for a community meeting, and they were like, "You're doing this because you want to, you're treating other people badly," and it was so hurtful.
Yeah.
And
You're like, why didn't you talk to me about this before?
yeah, but it was really odd. It was like for years and years and years, we were running this community program, and we were being treated as if we were like enemy number one or something. Because someone came up and was like, they're running a select lacrosse program. It excludes other kids. It brings kids in. You have to bring kids in for other communities too.
Hmm.
The team has to be good because you have to build the brand. Because you build the brand, and then the kids get recognition. The college coaches come watch the teams. So I did all this marketing and all this branding. So that was really hurtful. The trust there was really, really lost.
Yeah.
And I dealt with it probably not so great at first. It probably was like saying what you were saying, like, why would they think this of me? Why would they think this of us? Like we're literally doing it for free,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so I was like heartbroken. Um,
And you stood it up from scratch too, didn't you? Like on your
oh
own?
yeah, and we were I mean, we were really successful. We had gotten one of the major lacrosse brands to um, come to Texas and give
Oh
us their
wow.
brand name for like as a nonprofit. So for free, like with like an operational fee, whatever, but not like, shoot, when my kids play lacrosse in New York for the same select brand, it was like $5,500 for a summer. And oh, God bless you. And we were doing it for like 1,000, because we just had to pay the operation fee, but we still had the brand. So at first I was heartbroken. Um, like what? Like kept asking why. But after I got over that heartbreak and the asking of why, like it kind of heals itself. And now I know
Mm-hmm.
that I learned from that I never want to change who I am.
No.
I would do it over again. I would do it the exact same way. I wouldn't hesitate. We got, I don't know how many kids through college.
Yeah.
We got, I don't know how many kids through, we had one kid whose like parents sort of kind of like left him.
Oh, geez. So he was.
Yeah. But he was
Yeah.
taken in by one of the lacrosse families, right? And
Oh,
every
that's
select,
nice.
every select tournament, one of us was bringing him somewhere. You're talking hotel, food, right?
Yeah.
Kid ended up being the valedictorian of his high school class, getting into
Wow.
like some crazy engineering program at UT. He was like nervous because there's no real lacrosse at UT, but that's not the point. The point
Mm-hmm.
is get you into a good school, right? So it was the structure, everybody around him. And so what I learned was that's who I am.
Yeah.
Like I will do for others. And even though I was heartbroken, and I mean really, really, really heartbroken because I put my career on hold for like 10, 11 years.
Oh,
'Cause every
wow.
moment, oh yeah, every moment I was working for the kids. But I would do it again. And that's what I learned from it.
Yeah. You learn to kind of trust yourself and that you're going to have naysayers regardless of what decision you make, really. But that shouldn't change what your mission is as long as you're focused on something that matters to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a good summary of it. I just think I really just learned that for me, as long as I am doing something for a good reason, like, and I know it's a good reason, then it really doesn't matter what other people think of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And you made a huge impact by the sound of it, too.
Huge. I mean, Glenn was an incredible, incredible coach. We had kids
I was
driving
going to
from,
ask if he was a team
yeah,
coach, too.
yeah, we had kids driving from Dallas to be with him, to be coached by him in our backyard for our kids in our backyard.
That's awesome.
And then when I say our kids, I mean like our community,
Yeah.
right? New York, like our community could roll out of bed. The guy from Dallas was driving 5 hours every Saturday and staying for practice through Tuesday in the summer in a hotel. But
That's awesome.
I did that, just in the backyard.
Hmm.
And it was really good. It was great. We had a great impact. I mean, we still have kids playing. We have one kid. Oh, where is he? I think he just did, I think he just did Lehigh. Yeah. And I'm telling you, even the girls, you would die if you saw me as a lacrosse coach. I don't even go in the sun. Everybody who knows me knows I don't even go in the sun. But I mean, we saw all these things happening for the boys, right? And nothing happening for the girls. And all these
Yeah.
girl moms were out, all these boy moms are out there. So funny. So funny.
Yeah. Whereas like over here, it's everywhere. Like you've been to Delaware for lacrosse matches.
Yeah. Yeah. People probably don't understand what I'm talking about.
Mhm. On the East Coast, it's everywhere. Like every
Every,
middle school and high school has a lacrosse team,
yeah.
boy teams, girl teams, all the private schools compete against each other. My wife's younger sister played on the boys team in high school because the
Yes.
girls team, yeah, because she was too competitive for the girls team, evidently.
Yeah. No,
Um,
the girls don't wear pads.
yeah, so
It
she
just means
wanted to be
they're
a little more
actually
aggressive.
more bad at oops, I can't swear on your podcast. It just means they're more bad buns because that ball is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so that gives a really good foundation on like who you are and like how you make your decisions on trust and everything. And you already talked a little bit about how you found your way into energy and commodities and compliance through the office manager role when you were like what 19. So like looking back into that now, how did you get into that role and what made you decide that that role actually fit who you were?
Oh my god, this is gonna be a terrible answer. One good job that opened up early enough and closed early enough for me to
Mm,
go to school, and I still had to go to school full time
yeah.
because I was getting, like, partial scholarships, and I couldn't be part-time,
Yeah, and you couldn't be on
right?
a kind of job that was like, "Hey, you've got a morning shift or a night shift." Like, you
Uh-uh.
had to have a
Do
very
a night
predictable
shift,
schedule.
right, and I wish I had an answer that was like, well, I ended up in commodities because I always liked farming. I literally ended up in energy and commodities because the markets were open earlier than the equity markets and they closed earlier than the equity markets. And I had to be to Spanish class by 4:20.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just strictly convenience. And then, you've been in it for 20 years now.
Yeah. Strictly necessity.
Mhm.
And like, it's like one of those things where it's like a gift that keeps on giving because not many people know what the commodities markets are.
Yeah.
Like go out to dinner and like how many
Because
times I've
it's not
told my
just stocks. It's not the stock market. It's very different.
stock market. That's right. But how many times have I gone out to dinner with like my dad or whatever, and he's introducing me to a friend, and he's like, she does the stocks market, and it's like,
No, Dad.
no, I don't even say
And
anything anymore because
yeah,
people will be like, oh, so can you tell me, should I buy IBM stock or something like that? I'm like, yes,
sure. Why not?
sure,
It's a blue chip. Everybody trusts
yeah.
it.
So it was just one of those things, and it ended up being lovely because
Yeah.
then, like in law school, there were no classes on commodities,
Hmm.
none. Every class was like an SEC regulatory class, no CFTC classes, nothing. And
Yeah.
so that kind of led me to I joined the uh the University of Denver has a commodities education board. Have you seen this? I'm on that board
Oh,
to try
wow.
to yeah, to try to figure out how to bring more commodities and like physical, like commodities and currency and uh energy trading, just even like infrastructure.
So that's a good question I can throw in here too. Like for those that don't know what a commodities market is, like how would you ELI 5 it? Like explain it like I'm a 5-year-old. What is a commodities market versus like other things that come to mind?
Yeah, okay. So a commodity is something fungible,
Hmm.
right? So it's like oranges, coffee, right?
The stuff you buy
Um,
when you go to the store or the stuff that
well,
it's made of.
well, the store stuff probably is more like that's more like an end product, but like yes, right. So like when it's like in the commodities markets, it's more like wholesale, like the grains being moved,
Mhm.
right? The oil and gas is being moved, but it's gasoline in your car. That's a retail sale. I mean, it's still a commodity, but
Yeah.
um, so those markets are basically energy, metals, agriculture, currency, right? Now you have the digital assets, and then you have all the derivative products
Hmm.
that are based on the value of those things. So if you have like a futures contract that's based upon, the price of grain or whatever, that is also considered a commodity in the United States, like regulated by the Commodity Futures
Yeah.
Trading Commission, right? So it is a thing that we use and consume, and the value of that thing goes up and down based upon supply and demand fundamentals and distribution and transportation, right? Whereas a stock market is you own a piece of a company
Yeah.
essentially,
It's the
and you make
brands.
money. Say it again.
Stock markets are the brands. Commodities markets are the ingredients.
Yeah, it's like that mostly because when you own a stock, you like you make money when the company kind of is successful. So you make money based upon whether the company is selling a lot of whatever the hell,
Hmm.
you know, or is successful. You're essentially getting a piece of the company. Whereas when you're buying and selling like a commodity, um, you really are buying and selling based upon your supply and demand fundamentals. So, like if you're buying, I don't know, a barrel of oil, it's tied to some index somewhere usually where people
Yeah.
track pricing, and then you make money or don't make money based upon, what you paid for that commodity, what you're using it for. Because if you have to consume it to then make something else, right? Like you want to buy it low so you can consume that oil or whatever to make your, I don't know, your water bottle.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
like that. I like that breakdown. To where like y- if you're a stock investor and you really like high tech stocks and like Cisco and Dell and IBM and all that, Well, like, what are they selling? They're selling computers, they're selling microchips and processors and GPUs and all that stuff. Those are made of things. They're made of copper and gold and silicon. Like, those are the
That's right.
commodities. So, like, if you're strategically, I know you can't say this because you're a lawyer, but like strategically, I would think if I'm going to invest in tech stocks, I should also invest in the commodities that underpin those stocks because that aligns with the value of things that interested in investing with.
Right. It's a very hard market to invest in because it takes an awful, awful lot of money. Right. It takes a
That's
ton
probably
of,
why it's not as common too, then.
which is probably why it's not common. But you're absolutely right in that if you were going to buy stock in one of those companies you were talking about, you would do some due diligence and you would
Mhm,
say to yourself, how are they sourcing their copper?
mhm.
How are they hedging the price of copper if it goes up? Because if I'm going to buy that stock of that company, I want to make sure that they're managing their like commodity inputs and their price risk. And and currency is also regulated as a commodity, right? So you would say, listen, where are they operating in the world? And if they're operating in a place that's different than the United States, are they hedging the difference in
Yeah,
buying power, whatever the hell currency it is, right? So I guess you're right. A lot of people don't know a lot about it because it takes a lot of capital to invest in these things. But it is important for those people who are buying stocks. I just don't know if people know, like I know my dad and mom probably don't, which is why they always explain that I'm a equity lawyer or whatever.
yeah,
It's all sort of connected. Like I always say that commodities literally, it's our food. I mean, it literally is our food supply,
mhm.
it is our energy supply, it is our money, right? It is fundamental to everything we do. Which is why I was so lucky be able to get that job at like 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah, I wish I coulda got a job like that at 18 or 19 instead of joining the army and going to war.
Yeah, I know. I know. I know. But I just got really lucky. And the guy that I worked for, I don't know, he must have seen something in me because he paid for me to take the Series 3, the Series 7, the Series 63. Like, so I
So
was,
many different certifications you need too.
yeah. I mean, I don't have them anymore,
Mhm.
but it helps. Like, if someone
Yeah,
comes to me today and wants to figure out how to structure a product or a market, I mean, it comes down to the fact that when I was 19 years old, this guy made me take all these tests and you have to study for them.
yeah, and a lot of people fail multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah. And they cost money, but he just paid for it. So I just did it.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great opportunity that just fit because of necessity. So, we've had a lot of different conversations too, and I wanna go back to some of the things we've talked about in one of them or in a few of them, but one of the things I know we've talked about a few different times is, around the standards that are written when we're talking about these commodities and, like, how they're issued, specifically talking about, like, carbon and some of those, like, newer commodities. So, I recall you saying that, like, a lot of these standards are written without really looking at the law. They're written from, like, an engineering perspective. So, do you remember the first time that you actually, like, saw that gap with some of these standards and, like, how you started to interact with them?
Yeah. So do you think that your audience understands what we're talking about or should I back it up a little?
Feel free. Yeah, please.
Okay. So, what we're talking about now is there is an intangible type of commodity that's being created all around us. Um, and for the most part, if you're going to think about it, it is the ownership of a sustainable something, right? So it is the ownership of a reduction, right, of some kind in your carbon footprint, or it is the ownership of a fuel that has a lower carbon burn, right? That reduction or that lower carbon burn of the fuel, that in and of itself is being bought and sold today like a commodity because they're packaged up, right, in the most general sense of the word into like their carbon dioxide equivalent because we were trying to remove carbon dioxide, if that's the bad word, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere or reduce the amount of carbon dioxide we kind of release into the atmosphere. So they're being packaged up as commodities, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Because they're each unit is commoditized, supposedly, right? So the way that, and the reason why the market is doing that is because they believe it will have a bigger impact if more people buy and sell and buy and sell, and it's more like oranges or more like, you know, oil, where like, you're going to get light, sweet crude, you know what it is, right? And so the way that we get comfortable that what it is we're buying is fungible, or it is what, it'll have the impact we say it will have, is through standards and methodologies. So standards are usually just, in this context, what you're asking me about is usually just either a government or a person, entity that comes up with the rules of the road to show that that carbon dioxide equivalent that you're buying and selling actually, came from, I don't know, a methane captured from a well, or actually came from, uh, you know, you know, not using burning wood in Africa, right? So the standards set out the rules for how you create your in this case project. I'll say project. Sometimes it's not project. Sometimes you're producing it just a sustainable thing, like a sustainable fuel, right? Um, and it says to you, okay, listen, like if you're going to cap a well, you need to measure how much methane is leaking from the well every minute of every day for the next 40 years before I'll let you say, if once you cap it, 40 years from now, how much methane is no longer leaking into the air that you then turn into carbon. Like that's what the standards say.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very, very technical. Like they literally tell you how to measure um, molecules
Yeah.
of gases in every aspect of what you do, to then package it into its carbon dioxide equivalent, to then package it into something that we're commoditizing to buy and sell. So it's very, very technical.
Yeah.
And
To
that's what I,
oversimplify from my perspective, it's like turning the air into a commodity, but also like having a profit and loss statement to say like, here's a positive impact and here's a negative impact, and we should try to balance this at some point.
right. It's like that because you can't touch and feel it or
Mhm.
see it. It's called
But we know
intangible.
it's there.
But we know we've done it, right? And so to make the buyer of that thing comfortable, the standards say, don't worry, buyer, we made them measure the methane leaking for every 40 years for every minute. And we made them use, infrared light, and buyer,
Mhm.
don't worry, here's our standard where you can
And
literally
this is
view
how they measured it.
like how they measured it. Cause you're literally going on trust.
Mhm.
And so what I've found is that these really smart freaking chemists and engineers are so smart in chemistry and engineering, but they didn't actually think of the legal aspects of it. So like for example, if you decide tomorrow that you're not going to use your car to drive to work, right? That is your car. You're not doing it. You're not driving to work. I can't then say, well, because Matt didn't drive his car to work, I now have the right to sell that difference in, emissions of
Mhm.
his, right? So a lot of times what you found in these standards is that the the folks selling the property right didn't actually own the property right, because they would like go onto land. I mean, I've seen it. They go onto land that was like owned by the Costa Rican government, plant
Yeah.
a tree, tell everybody they planted a tree, and they followed the standard, and they did because they
Expect to
planted.
get paid for it.
Yeah, they measured how much the leaf grew, right? But they didn't actually own the land, right? So how do they then own the tree? So then how do they then own the removal, right? And you can't sell something you don't own just fundamentally. And so a lot of times, when I represent buyers, it's like one of the first things I look at. I mean, obviously I have to look at, or have a technical analyst look at the
Mhm.
technical side if I can't figure it out myself, which I'm pretty good at it, but I always look to the legal aspects of it, because what you don't want is for this market to collapse because, you know, as it is, you're going on trust. As it is, you're going on the fact that it's intangible, right? So you want, my whole goal in doing things like that is to make sure that we have given this market and this sort of really creative way of helping sort of create more commodities and create more business opportunity for folks while helping the environment, that it doesn't just die because we didn't think it all the way through, you know?
Yeah, it's like to maybe make an extreme example, it's like you walking into a grocery store, taking a bunch of stuff that isn't yours and then selling it on the sidewalk. It's like, that's not your stuff to sell, even though you have it in your hands and you can hold it and, like, there's that. You didn't buy it. You didn't get the rights to actually sell it in the first place.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's it sort of in a very simplistic nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, like, sure, I'll pay somebody to come I'd love for someone to come on my land and plant a bunch of trees, but in the end, it's my land, so, like, if they're not expecting me to pay them for that and they're expecting someone else to pay them, then, like, maybe I should be the one that's getting paid for it since it's my land that made the impact. And so you
Right.
get in this, like, debate between the landowner and the one that actually has the rights and the one who's just wanting to do the right thing, and sometimes they get taken advantage of, or they don't realize that they had to do certain things to profit from the positive impact they're trying to make.
Right. Or they tell the person, go ahead, go plant the trees. And they don't realize how much money they're giving up until
Once they figure it out, they're like, "Hold on."
until they figure it out. That's right. That's more like it. Because for the most part,
Oh.
that's what I'm afraid. Because for the most
You
part,
don't want people to get taken advantage of.
well, I just don't want the market to die because someone's gonna be like, wait a minute, you bought that from Dina. It doesn't belong to her, it belonged to Matt. And give me my money. Right. And then all of a sudden
Yeah,
we have a big run
yeah,
because because Matt didn't understand how valuable it was. But that's
yeah,
what's happening,
exactly.
right? So you have people who are following the standards and they believe they're doing the right thing. So they go up to Matt and they're like, hey, Matt, can I plant trees on your land and remove carbon? And Matt says yes. Matt doesn't
Yeah.
understand that I'm going to package that up and sell it. And today I may only be able to sell it for 20, but tomorrow, what if I can sell it for 120? What I don't want, right, is for Matt to then realize how much money there is there, which there is. There's a big opportunity here. And then like we have like this run on the market. So I always look at things from both a legal perspective and a regulatory perspective as
Yeah,
well, because there's a lot of there's like a lot of nuances here. So like especially when you're
and it's
dealing
not a
with
government enforced market for a lot of it either. Like, for
no, it's
some
not.
some versions of the commodity it is, but, I mean, the voluntary market is a $2 to $3 billion a year market, and that's not governed by any federal government.
Well, the market is not, but the product is.
Yeah.
Okay. So like you're so I always make this analogy. Like if you want to take your company public, that is your choice. But the moment you decide to take your company public, you need to follow the SEC rules, right? In your disclosure statements, right? Okay. Same thing. You're not mandated to participate on the voluntary markets, and there are no rules telling you what you must and must not do on this market. But once you participate, you have to follow the regulations, which means you can't commit fraud,
Mhm.
can't commit market manipulation. You have to make sure that whatever it is you're packaging up and selling is real, right? Because again, the CFTC has very broad fraud and market manipulation authority, and they have gone after people and said, I don't care it's a voluntary market. You told people that you removed blankest amount of blankety blank and you didn't. It's fraud
Yeah,
and it's a
yeah.
commodity. So we're
Hmm.
coming after. You know what I mean?
Yeah, do you think that's holding the market back, or do you think, like, aligning that with the voluntary activities and standards is what would push the market forward?
I think it would push it forward. I think that what's holding the market back is people think that it's not regulated. That's what
Okay.
blows my mind. Is there
Yeah.
they mix and match the fact that there is no like you're not required to participate with the fact that it's not regulated. Like
Yeah.
you should be more
I
you
guess it
you don't
depends
have
on where the company's based that's actually doing the activities, right?
well, not really. Like if they're gonna sell something into the United States or advertise something into the United
Oh.
States, I'm imagining that the CFTC would say, guess what? I'm gonna try to claim jurisdiction if I don't have it.
Okay, so even if, like, say my company Demia, we do a project in Brazil and we sell the credits from that to a US entity, that is very clearly regulated. Those activities are clearly regulated by the CFTC. But if a company in Ghana does the same thing and tries to sell to Microsoft, does that still work the same way?
Yeah, I would say that they would claim jurisdiction because Microsoft is a US company. And I
Okay.
actually think that, depending upon how egregious it is, I'm not sure if like if you just offer it into the United States, if they wouldn't try to claim jurisdiction.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's a global market.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's a global market makes it also very tricky,
Yeah. It's very
um,
complicated.
very complicated thing. Because in the United States, the things that you and I are talking about, they're considered non-financial, but in the UK, they're considered financial. So
Mm,
how do you have something that's here considered non-financial, meaning it can be delivered and you don't have to, you know, treat it like a financially settled contract. But in the UK, they do consider them financially settled, so they have to be regulated by MiFID or something. I'm not really a UK
yeah.
lawyer. Like those are the things that we have to deal with often.
That's really interesting. So like even like if we're selling it through the US company, but we're selling it into the UK to a buyer there instead of to a buyer here, that's a different then we have overlap in like our CFTC and their commodity regulator.
Right. Yeah,
So
but
like how does that work?
I think that for some of this stuff they figured out like they memorandums of understanding. So like I think for and I don't know which countries we have it for or for which whatever, but I think if you
Yeah. Because there's
follow and I don't even
203
know
countries out there, so I'm sure you don't know them all
yeah, I don't know, but I don't
the
even
top
know
of your
if
head.
there's like certain things that you have to no matter what follow the laws and where you're selling it to, and MiFID may be one of them. But yeah, you have to follow the rules there. So like for example, I think it's like a reporting requirement. Um, so here you wouldn't have to like report it to the
Hmm.
government because it's not financial. You would have to make sure you take physical delivery and settle it here. Otherwise, your agreement could be determined to be a derivative or a swap, which has other rules, right? But I do think that if you sell it there, even if it's considered physical here, you may have to still report it there. Do not
Yeah.
quote me. I have to ask a colleague.
Yeah, I mean that's I don't know if I've really heard project developers in the space. And for those of you that are listening don't know what that is, like in the carbon markets there's different stakeholders. The one that's doing the activity and making the impact is known as the project developer. They're the one that's managing the site, measuring the things in accordance with the standards and working with the registries to actually issue this commodity and sell it. So I don't know if I've talked to project developers that say, oh, well, if we're selling into the UK, we have to abide by this regulation. If we're selling into Germany, we have to abide by that one. So the buyers become much trickier when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. And I think you just put, there's definitely ways to do it. Like you
Hmm.
put into your contracts, like you will abide by all applicable law,
Hmm.
you know, and you will, that's a way that you can make sure that whoever it is that's buying it, make sure that they know the law. It's
Yeah.
just not, it's not something that a lot of people think about actually, you know, but the opportunity here is so big. It is so big and it is such a wonderful and like exciting thing to be in. Um, that you just literally just, you're like, how do I make it work? Right. In
Yeah.
the most
Like
simple way possible.
how do we create these incentives to do the right thing is essentially the whole reason for the market. Like we want people to do the right thing and pick up their trash and clean up their litter and recycle their stuff. But like a lot of companies won't do it if there aren't incentives to do it. So the reason the market exists is to create those incentives. So we've got to get this stuff right or else it just is going to continue to backpedal.
Yeah. And, incentives like profit,
Hmm.
you know, why not? It's a
Yeah.
very important thing that we're trying to do as the human race. So people should profit from it. And actually, you know, you hit the nail on the head. Like if we can figure that out, like how to make the market function. Right now you said what, like 2 billion? It's predicted to be like huge. That one market you're mentioning predicted to
The
be what, like
voluntary side.
predicted to be huge by 2030, right? Because
Yeah.
there's
I
money.
think by 2050, they're predicting that the voluntary market's supposed to get over $1 trillion a year in
Yeah, like
transactions.
$1 trillion. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And some of the regulated markets are already there. Like the
Yeah.
European Union's emissions trading system is a I think it's no, I think it's like $800 billion a year in transactions. So it's almost $1 trillion market across 20 different countries, essentially. China's is a similar scale, and there's other regulated versions of this market that are already operating at that scale. And now this voluntary market is going to start interacting with them through new mechanisms that are being generated. And so all that finance transitions from developed countries to developing countries. So how does money from Germany end up going to Brazil or Peru or Kenya and helping their infrastructure get to the same level that ours is too, but in a more responsible way?
Right? Oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about it now, but if we had another time, we could. But there's definitely something to be discussed and thought about when you're talking about like some of the marketplaces that you're talking about, like Peru, Brazil, United States, UK, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know enough to talk about it intelligently, but there's like this whole thought process that there needs to be some control over this market globally, because if not, all you'll end up with is like the UK and the US having, like African nations and Brazilian nations stop doing things to get the credit, and we'll still sell to the United States and the UK. We'll just keep doing whatever the hell we're doing, right? And we
Yeah.
don't have any actual changes. I mean, I don't know if that's real or that's a real sort of actual scenario that can happen, but that was one of the theories about why um they needed to like prevent or create like a system to prevent like too many credits being or too much activity happening in like developing nations where only developed nations buy.
Hmm.
And again, I don't know whether this is even a real scenario or what, but someone was saying that that's something that's an economic sort of impact that you need to always keep in the back of your mind when you're developing these markets. And I do develop these markets, so I always try to think of everything holistically, but I don't know enough about that yet.
Yeah. And so like we've had a lot of discussions, and I remember one of them you said, if you come to me as the buyer's lawyer, I'm going to make sure you own the property, kind of like drilling down on one of the things we've talked about. But do you have a real example where asking that question and like proving that someone did or didn't own the property changed the outcome of a deal? And you might not be able to share that, of course, as a lawyer, but
Yeah, no, but I had a great experience. I
mhm,
can't tell you who with or what standard, but great experience. I was representing a buyer. They were using a standard, very well done, the standard from like a technical and engineering perspective. Really well done. Like I was happy how they described pipeline and meter reads and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't have the property right. And it was one of those weird things where it's like, because there's a product developer, a project proponent, the blah, 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 blah. It was like one of those things where like they couldn't show me like how they owned what it is they said that they were owning. And they were on like some public park or wildlife, whatever, conservation, whatever. And so I had a great experience. So I reached out to the entity that made the standard and said, love your standard, super great. Can you please provide the documentation to show us as the buyer how you actually own what it is you're selling us? And we are good to go. And the woman on the other line was like, huh, interesting. It took her a week or two
yeah.
to get the documentation together, but she got it together because she was like, interesting point. And I think as long as people keep their sort of minds open and understand that if you actually are working in this market, like we're we're doing something as we go. We're like developing it as we go. We're like flying the plane and building the plane at the same time.
Yeah.
Long as you keep that in your head when you're going through all these different types of transactions, you are going to go far. The moment you like begin to say, well, I'm doing it this way, and the only way I'm doing it is right, and blah, 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 is the moment we all lose out.
Yeah.
And no, so far I've had great experiences, like talking to people about like digitizing things and like their data or whatever. I've had great experiences because sometimes people like they like go down this data route
Hmm.
where like it's data, you're buying data. And the moment you do that, that you're only buying data, you then don't have the ability to consume it and make the claim, right? 'Cause you have to have something you consume and make the claim for it to be considered a physical commodity here, long story
Hmm.
short. But like I tell people sometimes that have like data companies, like if you just change this little word, right? We will bring the value of what it is, that the data you're collecting so much higher because we able to, say, that you create the data shows the property right. And people
Yeah.
are really great.
Yeah, that actually aligns perfectly with what was going to be my next question, but I feel like kind of led into the answer of it, which is, you were very direct in one of our discussions where you said like data doesn't prove ownership, leases do. And so as more systems really start to lean in on real-time data and digital platforms and monitoring and satellite data, like where do you see people getting that distinction wrong?
What did I say?
You said data doesn't prove ownership, but leases do.
I did? Oh, maybe I meant like you had to have the underlying agreement maybe?
Yeah.
Because data does actually prove, well, data proves that the thing exists,
It
right? So
proves
like,
it exists, but it doesn't prove that you own the thing.
no, but if like you had the data that said, I have this lease agreement,
Mhm.
right? And the lease is like for 100 years and, it's restricted. If we're talking about like something like on land, like that's data. You just put that
Yeah.
in the data
Which
stat.
is a very specific kind of data that you also have to like, I can
Yeah,
have all the satellite data on a property in, Uruguay, but that doesn't mean I own the property.
that's right. That's really what I meant. Cause I sort of
Yeah.
kind of love data and you gotta have good data because like
Thanks,
that's like,
mom and dad.
so that's like the other part of my job, right? Is to, okay, so like the legal side is look at the legal side, but the data side, I really have to look at the data too. I gotta
Mhm.
look at the data. I gotta look at the math. I gotta look at the molecules because if they don't have the right data, to show that the property right exists, we'll never be able to resell it
Yeah.
or forget even resell it. We'll never be able to consume it and then make the environmental benefit claim in a way that makes us comfortable, right? Because again, that's another place where you can be found to be engaging in fraud, right? Not necessarily the CFTC, but maybe like the FTC or even the SEC at this point, because if you're a public company and you put like a claim or something in your sustainability report and it's not real,
Mhm.
you can be in trouble if you're a public
Yeah,
company,
absolutely.
right? So that's where data is so important and having the right data and the
Yeah.
satellite images, because you can then more comfortably make that consumption, more comfortably make that claim. And and you just know then that your risk is so much less
Yeah.
from that perspective. They're both important.
Yeah, there's just so much more depth that you're able to go into on, like, the activities and the commodities that you're generating to show that, like, this is a real thing, and here's all the impact, and the proof is, in the pudding.
Right. And you have to.
Mhm.
Um, to like I said, if we're gonna make the market move, make the market go, you have to.
Yeah.
Because if you're buying it to consume it because you want to reduce your own emission footprint as a corporation, like without the data, they're not gonna be as comfortable buying it and then
Yeah.
making the claim.
That
And
makes
then,
sense.
we have to get secondary trading going. You're not gonna be able to buy and sell it if
Yeah, when are
you
we gonna
can't.
have a futures and an options market for
Yeah.
carbon and
Yeah.
methane?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
that's when it really
Totally
starts to
on the
crank up the
grind.
volume on transactions.
Yeah. It will
So
absolutely do that.
I think that's a good question, to move because 'cause we're moving towards the closeout here too. But if you're looking 10 years out, if carbon markets and like digital assets and all these things are really going to hold up and not like unravel like they have a tendency to do cyclically over the last, 10 years or so, what does that really look like to you?
Yeah. So, um,
Like, what are we
so we
missing as a market? And what do we just need to really step up our game on?
yeah. So I do think we need to probably digitize a lot more
Mhm.
of the data. Um, we do need to probably um, get more on board as a market with the fact that there's a legal aspect in addition to the technical aspect of the molecule, right? And so in 10 years, we'll have all that figured out. The data that represents every aspect of that intangible property right will be digitized. It'll be digitized in a way where it'd be super easy to know who owns it, who bought it, who consumed it, right? So we are going to, in 10 years, we're going to completely eliminate risk of double counting, right? And because of that, people are going to be more comfortable buying and selling it. And because people are going to be more comfortable buying and selling it, the like pricing is going to become more, well established and well
Hmm.
known, and derivative markets are going to grow so that when people have to make these big, or want to, I should say, make these big purchases to reduce their footprint or whatever, that they can hedge that price risk, just like we were talking about with the other commodities, right? And so again, to go full circle, when you want to invest in a company, you will not only like your computer chip company, you will not only look to see how they are, you know, buying metal, you will look to see how they are buying, their carbon commodities, and then hedging that price risk, because that's the company you want to invest in,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Cause they're thinking far enough ahead to where like they're not making this claim on their future earnings and their margins. And then all of a sudden they get hit by something like magnets are being constrained by China. So they can't actually build any of the things they want to build because 95% of the supply comes from one country.
Right. Right. Well, yes. I mean, and that's the thing. Those are the decisions you make when you're like deciding to invest in a company, but it's all tied together. So in
Yeah.
10 years, it'll be there. In 10 years, we'll probably have our hands around a little bit more globally how the market works.
Hmm.
Um, we'll have more, I do this too, like figure out how to change debt
Yeah.
stack, right? Like credit facility, borrowing bases to include these type of
Insurance.
digital sort of commodities, digital asset, digital securities, right? Because, you know, uh, people need money to put these,
Yeah.
as you said, make these projects or whatever, produce these products. And so we'll get there in 10 years.
Do you think we're still just issuing carbon credits, or do you think it's spread out to other kinds of intangible but measurable commodities?
Oh, I think it's spread out. I
Yeah.
think you see a lot now of like, the buying and selling of like unbundled environmental attributes from
Mm,
certain products that are actually made in it with like a sustainable way. You also see people now, which people like, right? Like you
mhm.
see people taking this construct of
Like green steel.
yeah, yeah. But the environmental attributes like either in the steel itself or they take it out and you're gonna have to buy it separate, right? Like they
Mhm.
unbundle it or whatever. And you also see people now taking like this project concept you were talking about. Like, so like they do a project, but the project's like inside their company. Normally you do a project and it's outside of your company, but like you see people thinking ahead, like how do I use these standards that are already built to
Yeah.
do a project inside my company? I'm gonna create a carbon credit, but I'm gonna treat it like it's inside the value chain or inside my company, like turn that carbon credit
Mhm.
into an inset so
Yep.
that
Instance
down the
versus
line
offsets.
develop. Yeah. And you see this happening now. Like the people are now saying, well, shoot, there is already a standard of methodology. Let me
Yeah.
use that.
So instead of paying for someone else to go do this thing and buying it for them, why don't I just do it myself and I can factor it into my
Right.
environmental accounting?
Right. And then you like take it into like your example of green steel,
Yeah.
right? So they do something with like a smelter or whatever that makes them have like a lower carbon in something, but they're
Yeah.
using the standards and methodologies from the carbon credits. They then are like taking it and like almost like consuming it inside of their own. Well, I guess what do you mean? Well, let's say what do you mean? Like concrete, maybe a good example. Because what do you need to
Concrete's
make
a great
concrete?
example.
Like what do you need to make concrete? Sand,
Yeah.
water,
Lime, ash.
right? So like pretend you're doing the project because there's tons of methodologies out there for like recycling water,
Mhm.
right? Or taking recycled water or um, figuring out something that would go into that cement, right? So you would use that like project based counting, which is for a project,
Mhm.
but you're going to actually put it inside your like making the cement and then you would consume it inside the making your cement type thing. And then that cement
Yeah.
becomes
I
like
mean,
a cement. Like there's so many cool things happening.
yeah, like the production of cement
Call right now. And
produces a
I have to go.
produces
But
oh, okay. Um, okay,
I'm so
so
sorry.
no, you're good. Well, one last question, then we can close out. So that I believe there's a significant difference between being well known and being known well. So to close this out, what do you want anyone who may listen to this to know about you so they can go forward feeling like they know you well?
Oh, so they should know that I am the type of person that wears my heart on my sleeve no matter what, even in professional situations. So you gotta like it or hate it, but that's what you get.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that too, off of the many conversations we've had. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, you're now at Foley and Lardner. Uh, what's the best way to contact you if they want to work with you on commodities?
Yeah, sure. So my email address is Deanna.Reitman@Foley.com, and I will spell it Deanna dot Reitman, Reitman at Foley, Foley.com. And or just look me up on LinkedIn and hit me there.
All right. I'll put it in the notes for everybody. Thanks for your time, Dina. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait till next time. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, make sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen, so you don't miss what's coming next. If trust is at the heart of your work, whether in sustainability, business, governance, or personal leadership, I'd love to hear your story. Reach out, share your thoughts, or tag someone who should join the conversation on our socials. Let's shape the future of trust together. Until next time, thanks for listening.